Please welcome back to Santa Barbara Academy Award nominated writer-director Mike Mills.
That's very sweet. There's a dog right here.
That's my dog.
Is it?
Yeah.
Can I pet it?
Yeah, of course.
Hey, sweetie. Hi. Hi. Oh, my goodness. Hi. Gosh, you're beautiful. Wow. That was very nice of you all to come see the movie.
Wow.
Yeah. It's true. And isn't it amazing to be in a room with people and watch a movie?
And to watch one of your movies. Actually, I couldn't think of nothing nicer than to see a Mike Mills film and then actually to see you. You're like the nicest guy I know. You're so sweet.
Thank you. I don't know what to say to that. But it is, so I had to just acknowledge, thanks so much for having me, Roger, and the film. It's film festivals like this keep like community together and keep like film community together, and it's like so crucial, especially after the last couple of years, right? When I was editing this, I didn't get to see it once with anyone in a room because, you know, editing during COVID. And it just made you really hyper aware of how kind of rare and special and like pagan this is for all of us to come into a room together and watch someone's dream, right? And sit in the dark with strangers. It's like wild. Who thought of this? But thank you for keeping it going.
And thank you for being here. I do mean it. You're one of the most special people in my world. And right off the bat, this film, Mike, I was blown away by the fact that there is this very intimate moment, but then you contrast it with a bigger scope. So we were focused in the Joaquin Phoenix Woody world, but then it expands to cities and to kids, you know, speaking about issues, but on a higher ground. So we go micro and you know, was that always?
Yeah, I love that. I think I've tried to find that in like the last 3 films, like something very personal and actually very personal to me because it started with me and my kid. But I'm trying to find a way to find the spectrum to like the largest side. And that really is true with parenting. I bet people feel this, like, yes, it's about giving your kid a bath and washing their hair and adoring them and having this deep interpersonal thing, but it's also like taking your kid's hand and walking out into capitalism and society and history, and like there's this crazy spectrum. I was trying to put that in the movie.
The idea of, I just don't recall seeing a film about childhood and about kids that treat them like adults and their issues with the same value as adult issues in movies. You know, can you talk about that?
I think that came from being around my kid and all the other kids my kid, you know, introduced me to, and also some amazing teachers and parents. So there's one teacher named Nancy Gell who runs the preschool my kid went to. And her whole trip is sort of child sovereignty and child empowerment. And yes, they're developmentally different, but no less than. Or like their issues and concerns and underlying needs of their actions are all as valid and rich and deserve as much respect as any of ours. So, and Nancy's in the movie for a second. She's an older woman that's at the table with Gabby Hoffman. So, you remember that scene? That's nice. And Nancy's an amazing movie star of a preschool teacher. And yeah.
Kids, you know, there are, you know, many moments where kids are being asked to talk about the future and how they see the future, but it's a radio show. Is that supposed to be ironic, the fact that we're using the technique of radio to ask young people about how they foresee the future?
You mean because radio is sort of like semi-antiquated?
Yeah.
I guess I'm semi-antiquated because I think I just want that job, so I put it in my movie, so maybe I could get that job. Like I love Ira Glass, This American Life, Radio Lab, Studs Terkel, Scott Courier. Maybe it's just the grass is greener. It just seems like an amazing job. And I knew I wanted to interview these kids as to broaden out the spectrum, to have like this kind of psychic landscape of like kids' perspective on our reality. And having a radio journalist was a great way to get in there. But yeah, no, I want to be Stud Circle.
Tell me about the photography, which is absolutely gorgeous, and the notion of working with black and white.
So Robbie Ryan was our DP, and is an amazing Irish gentleman.
We just got nominated for his cinematography in Europe. Didn't we just hear?
Oh yeah, we won something. We just got a text.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Robbie. Lovely Irish man. He lives on a boat and is like a character of an Irish person. And the idea of doing black and white is a bunch of reasons. I went to art school. I didn't go to film school, so I often think in like art references. So I thought of like David Hockney portraits, and like the simplicity of it, and it's like so fresh and kind of al dente and intimate because of that. So I often said to myself, it's a drawing, not a painting, you know. And then that image of the kid and the adult, right, like walking through space, that to me is like an archetypal Jungian fable-like image. And black and white really is a crazy abstraction. It pulls us out of our contract with reality and kind of throws you into like a different art space, story space, where I feel like you can like think of it as a fable a little bit more. And that's part of why I played like Claire de Lune a few times. And then I love Satie piano. Satie's like a huge hero for me, and I kind of want to get to that openness and that, like you can enter, I feel like you could, Satie's music, the notes are so far apart, you can like walk in between them and kind of cruise around and feel the music. And I kind of want my movie to be like that. And black and white, I think, because it's talking quieter, like neurologically.
Could you please turn that off?
It happens to the best of us. There, but for the grace of God, go I. So anyways, I think black and white has like a gentleness that I wanted.
And when you were visualizing the film, the fact that we go through 4 major cities and we're going to see them in black and white, was that always your vision to see 4 different big cities in the United States in monochrome?
So I started writing this. I've noticed. Oh, there we are. Okay.
Yes, you're right up there in big.
I somehow feel big.
Yeah. Well, you are big.
So I started writing. I started thinking about this out in 2016, right? And which was a very traumatic year. I feel like because of someone, and because of America, right? And so I had to make art in America after that. And not that I have the answer to that. My answer became me talking about my kid, or me and my kid, and relying back on that intimacy. But I wanted to have us be out in America and kind of dealing with America. And I could have picked so many different cities, obviously, but I've lived in Los Angeles and New York, and I love them. And then I just had hunches about Detroit and New Orleans. And I wish I could have gone to more cities and have this little story in this big space.
But you're talking to somebody who sees patterns everywhere.
Yeah.
And I adore the fact that we went north, west.
Yeah, it's across.
South.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was intentional. The fact that we went west, east, north, south.
It wasn't, I didn't think, make a cross with cities. But when I was like, what about those? Because I thought about Memphis. I thought about going to Kansas. I thought about Maine. But when I was like, those, it makes a cross. Exactly. When you're beginning a project, you're just praying for any help, right? So maybe that cross is a little bit of help. Who knows? Or maybe there's a reason. I think Detroit and New Orleans share a lot. They're both like magic and tragic cities. They wear their wounds on their sleeve, and they have a ton of resiliency and beauty in them. And I've learned that shooting there, it's deeply true.
You alluded to the fact that this is inspired by the relationship with your son, but you did not make it a father-son relationship. You make it uncle. I know the answer to why you chose to be an uncle, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So I've written about my dad who sat in this theater and my mom who sat in this theater with me. That's sweet. Did you know them?
No, just your movies.
Oh, that's really funny. So you're like my kid. My kid's never met them, but knows them through the movies. Whenever I'm in Santa Barbara, I'm kind of like, who knew my parents?
His father was the head of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, and he's really instrumental to our city. For example, the sculpture that you've all seen of the rainbow down in the waterfront, his dad was responsible for that.
It's a Herbert Bayer thing that my dad recently. Very controversial at the time. And probably
If
still
Hank
is.
Pitcher was here, he would be angry.
Yeah. Okay, so I made movies about those people. My parents, they were passed away when I did it. So and I'm their child, right? So I have a different contract with them. So I just had a picture in my head like, oh, if I see them later, I'll just have to explain to them what I did, right? And that's literally what I thought. This is my kid. It's a completely different responsibility on my part. I don't want to throw too much of a shadow across their path. I can't talk about their mysteries. I can't talk about them too much, although this is how I really love to work. How's my volume? I feel like there. That's good, right? So I had to find ways to distance it from me and Hopper and make it about us, but not. And so I was hunting for how to do that. And the uncle thing came up, and I was like, and toying around with it. And it had these two amazing advantages. If he's an uncle that doesn't have a kid, then every single moment of being alone with this kid, he's not going to know what to do or how to handle it. He's going to have to learn right away. So that's great for filmmaking, right? That's like a Buster Keaton movie move. And I love Buster Keaton, and I think Buster Keaton's profound. So I was like, okay. Then I started writing more, and I was like, this feels like how I feel. As a biological father of one person who's constantly changing and every 3 months changes their rule book without telling you they did it, you're just constantly not knowing what to do or at the edge of your knowledge or just desperate. And so it became, I find it really accurate to my experience.
Tell us about casting Joaquin Phoenix, which when I introduced the film, I said, I've never seen him be more attractive, more...
I love that you found him sexy in this.
Yeah.
I do too, yeah.
Yeah, because he based his acting on you.
A little bit.
And he's mimicking you.
I don't think he's mimicking me, but...
in person, well...
I mean, his hair is much better, let's be honest. We didn't have hair and makeup on the film, so it was my job to kind of
And you're actually
do his
skinnier,
hair.
too.
Yeah. I'm skinnier. But weirdly, he fits into my clothes, and he would just wear my clothes, I was like, how are you fitting into my pants, fatty? I don't understand.
But was he, were you noticing that he was not impersonating, but that he was stealing things from you to become the character?
Just my clothes. I was telling Roger earlier, he would look at me. He's a really funny person. He's a lovely, funny person. You have like a laughing headache after a day with Joaquin. So he would look at me and he'd go like, Mills, and like that. And that meant, take off your pants right now. So I would have to, sometimes on set, I'd be like, okay, sorry, and hand him the pants, put them on, like, okay, let's shoot. And wardrobe knew to just run over with some pants for me. Who knows why he does that? He's a trickster. He just likes messing with you, too. I don't think he's impersonating me. I find him really, we're quite different, and that's why we like each other in some ways. Like, we enjoy our differences. Casting him, he really sweetly, he read the script, he came to meet me, basically to say, like, I don't get it. Like, I can't do this. What are you talking about, But that was nice. And then I thought it was over, but we just started laughing and having a good time. And we both like talking about all the kind of stuff that's in this movie, like brothers and sisters and kids and adults and family stuff. And like he texted me the next day, and I thought I was in love with him. And I thought it was over, though, so I was sort of like licking my wounds, and I get this text, and it's like a question about the script. And I have no idea like what his intentions are. I try to answer. And that went on for like months. And it kind of grew to like him coming over, and we'd read the script through together, and I would act out all the other parts, and he would do his part. I had no idea if he's going to do it or not, but his questions are so smart. Like, he's so smart about filmmaking and story and humans, just human perception. He's like a psychoanalyst. He can just figure you out so fast. So it was really rich, and I was like, well, and people would be asking me, is he doing it? I was like, I don't know. But he has like great advice, so I'm just going to keep this thing going, and maybe, hopefully he'll do it. You know, that went on for a long time.
But I skip a beat. What was it about Joaquin, based on the script and your idea of the film, that attracted you to
him?
To him.
I just find him like we were talking about The Master earlier. I just find all of his performances like so smart and specific and like cliche allergic and trying to find some way out of anything we know that he's going to do in that scene, right? And that's just endlessly exciting. And then, yeah, for sure, I'm like disgustingly sweet and wear my heart on my sleeve way too much. And he's much more of a trickster person and much more, he embraces his darkness in a really beautiful and fluid way. So I was like, that feels right. Like that, we could help each other here. we could add to each other.
But what was so refreshing about watching him in this is that we're used to seeing him playing, you know, the Joker in darker characters where he wears almost like a shield over himself. You know, he's acting, where this seems that he's exposing himself.
Yeah.
Was that, just watching him work, was that harder for him to?
Yeah. So at the beginning when he came and said like, I can't figure out how to do this. A lot of it was like, I hate naturalistic acting. It has to have the quotes, right? Because it's like, there's so much of that in the world where it's like, I'm acting natural, right? Which is the most crazy contrivance there really is. And he's like, it's so hard not to do that. It's so hard to get into this like minimal, simple, not putting a lot on it world without getting into like acting natural, right? And that drove him nuts. And when he sees that, it drives him nuts. So that was his huge concern. And sometimes on set, that would be his question to me, like, am I doing that? You know? And what really helped was Woody, the kid who's 10 to 11.
It's phenomenal.
And Woody is a really strange person. He's British, so he's doing an accent. He's 10. And like this is like his second time to America. He's working with the Joker, doesn't blink. He's 10. So I've just been doing a lot of press with him. He doesn't perform for you. He's there, he's available, he will tell you what he's thinking, he's really quite smart. So, but that's like performing's like when you're reaching out to the camera. He doesn't do that. And he's kind of in his own world and following his truth. I don't know how he got so sturdy. Probably his mom, Vonda. And that's amazing for another actor because Joaquin learned just to be like really reactive to Woody. And he said he figured that out like day 1 or 2. Like, oh, that's all I have to do is respond to Woody.
And like, the moment that Woody pantomimes his entire day, was that something that was scripted by you or?
So Woody, being 10, does a lot of like air drums and stuff like that. He's like doing that, and then Joaquin or Gabby, we're just getting set up. We're not shooting. They imitated him, and I saw it like from across the room. I was like, oh, that's like the whole movie. So I think it was in the scene with Joaquin at the table. I was like, hey, remember, like, what if you do something physical and you imitate it? I don't know what it is, just do it. And so Woody started doing the tapping, and then Joaquin tapped back. And I was like, oh, that is great. Then I asked him to do it with Gabby, and they do a version of it. And then Scoot came, was an amazing actor, does an amazing job. And I just said to them, like, so what can you do, Scoot, that's like physical that that Jesse, Woody can imitate and mime back? And Scoot just did that. Like, it's a whole day. I don't know if you know, it's like he goes to work and he opens his computer and he brushes his teeth. And, as a director, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, And that's my favorite kind of directing, I have to say, where some gift comes running at you and you just had to be ready to catch it. And it's like just creating opportunities for weird, interesting, unpredictable things to happen. It's like a thing I love to do.
In the moments where I just love when Joaquin Phoenix is reflecting on the recordings that he's done throughout the day. Tell us about how those scenes come about.
So when he's just talking into the mic, those ones, so I was trying to get Joaquin to, show him different radio people. And he was into Studs Terkel and wasn't into Ira Glass and was into someone that Ira told me to show Joaquin, and that's Scott Courier. Do you guys know Scott Courier? Lovely, really unique mind, speaks in this very monotone way about things that are really big and heavy, and he's kind of like that. And very unique. And then Joaquin was like, that guy's a baller. That guy's the guy, And about, like a week before we started shooting, Joaquin, Mills, come here. What if I did that? What if I just like recorded like a diary into the microphone and just what has been happening? And I was like, great, yeah, exciting, let's try that. So we shoot in order. The whole film is pretty much in order. It went from Los Angeles, New York to New Orleans. About every 3 or 4 days, we would do one of those scenes, and Joaquin, I would write stuff, and sometimes he's doing what I'm writing, but often he's just remembering the scenes that we shot. So that's really his intelligence, his really particular way with words, and it has a different texture to it because you're really watching someone think and remember, and it's just live. And I love having all those different textures in a film.
And going back to what we talked about, the sort of intimate moments between the uncle and the son reflect on the bigger picture. What I love about those moments is that it's also those moments are reflecting on the moments with him and Woody as well. So there's like this constant back and forth conversation within the scenes.
Between like the kid interviews part and the narrative part?
Correct, yeah.
That's interesting. That was so hard to get right. And it was, I don't know if it is right, but to get where it is. Me and my editor, Jen Vicarillo, so many iterations of, because those kids, we interviewed them for like 30, 40 minutes, and they say so many amazing things.
They could have been like a film within a film, those sequences.
Yeah. I was kind of trying to make it slightly its own film, or I felt like it would have been really exploitive and strange if I had what those kids were saying to enlighten my fictional people too much, or to be in service of the fictional part too much. So I wanted it to be their own story and not like just in service of Joaquin's journey or Woody's journey. But it had to relate enough so it wasn't like annoying or just sort of like, why am I watching this? And that was really intuitive and non-rational. You can't really predict why a certain line works and a certain one doesn't. So we just had to keep trying stuff.
Mm-hmm. All your films deal with memory and how ephemeral moments are, and we try to latch onto them, but they just drip out of our hands. And in the editing, you do this something that I think the only person I think has done something like that is Fellini, where there is this sort of flashbacks is the wrong word. It's like where we see bursts of things. Can you talk about how you develop that editing technique?
I don't know. I mean, I'm super pretentious.
No, you're
and
not.
And I love all
You're
those European films that moves like, so, Armando Olmi's like Fidanzati. So it does that a lot. I feel like where there's an emotional logic that is causal and going in a linear way. But what you see isn't just that scene. You see other scenes or moments that came before that frame that moment and like give you breadth to think about that moment. So I love films like that, and what was really interesting was finding ways to include part of a scene you haven't seen before. So like you did see them there, but you didn't see this moment, right? And that it was something that we kind of discovered in the edit, and then really I was like, that's trippy and interesting, and it's like, it is the way memory is. Like, yeah, I remember being here and talking to Roger, but then like a week later, like, oh, I completely forgot that moment with Roger, and that was like an amazing moment, right? I feel like that happens to me all the time. So that was a really interesting, just like in the trenches of editing discovery.
And it makes it very cinematic and alive in a way. The sound design is integral to the film. Of course, they're recording, but the street sounds and even the breathing. Can you talk about the?
I accidentally sent Roger because my sound designer's name is Roger.
So you guys don't feel like you're in an inside joke. I think it was right before Christmas.
Yeah.
I get an email in the middle of the night. I'm an insomniac. It's 2 a.m. I get an email, Mike Mills. And I open it, and there's nothing, but there's a sound bite in it. And it's heavy breathing. It's Mike going, and I said, okay, Mike is working on his film. And then, like, half an hour later, I get a message from him saying, Roger, I'm so sorry. That wasn't meant for you. I'm working on my film. I'm working on the sound design. Yeah.
I was stalking you in a very weird way.
Yes. 2 a.m.
That was so a weird thing happened. We didn't know it was going to happen. So black and white does this really strange thing, which I'm sure a smart neurologist could explain. It absorbs sound. It just eats sound. So this film, which probably I'm going to imagine sounded pretty naturalistic to you, right? And it has so many layers of sound. It has so many backgrounds. It has so much Foley. Every footstep, when Joaquin puts his hand through his delicious, beautiful hair, there's a little sound. If Woody's doing that, there's added, and it's all over the movie, more than I've ever done any of my color films, and it feels completely naturalistic and just, you don't think of it that way. It must be that there's some, when the color's gone, it changes your neurological receptors of sound or something. And we did things like when he loses him in the pharmacy, as soon as he's gone, a phone starts to ring, like kind of a shrill phone, and it gets louder and louder until he finds him. It's like total German expressionism move. But no one feels it. So it was really fun and like creative, and it did kind of become like a drawing, like it became more creative than any sound world I've done before.
And then the soundtrack, tell us about working with Aaron and Bryce Dressner. It's a beautiful score, and I love the fact that during the moments between the uncle and Woody, it just becomes very gentle and sweet.
Well, and they're brothers. They play in the band The National. I have like a
Nationals, yeah.
Yeah, I have a long relationship with them. I actually helped them make a record, weirdly. So luckily we have like a working friendship relationship, because I led them in every which way wrong that a director could. And they just had patience. Like, we started off trying to do the Mozart Requiem, like variations of it. And it was just too heavy-handed. And they work in this very iterative way. So like Bryce did some clarinet stuff, and those beautiful chords that kind of you hear over and over again, sends them to Aaron, who's living in a different country, who reinterprets it on synth and changes the chord structure a little bit, goes back to Bryce, changes it a little bit. So it's this very organic twin brother world that I enter. And the sound that they found, I really agree. I find it to be, I can say this because I encouraged them or I helped them, but they did it, right? It's like the sound of me relating to my kid. It's a sound of like trying to help your kid go to sleep to me. It's a very spacious, gossamer kind of world, but that has like a big heart in it. And that's them, and it's so beautifully organic, and like it's like saxophone and clarinets, and you hear like the clicking and stuff. And then Leslie Feist, who's a dear friend, and she's an amazing musician, and on her own right. And she became like my great edit friend, and helper, and like art friend, and because we were both working alone and just sort of like talking to each other through these lonely processes. I said, Leslie, will you please sing with what they're doing? And there's this really soaring, beautiful female voice every once in a while that to me is kind of like Viv or the mom sort of like coming in. So it's just very beautiful. It's hard to talk about because it's just like, it's like a kind of a wordless process, especially with twins. Like they both finish each other's sentences, love to hang out with each other, and are completely competitive with each other. So it's like an engine of just like making things.
I'm glad you mentioned Viv because it's such a lovely performance and also a wonderful character. You know, we've seen mothers in films where they're blamed for everything, and Viv is so complicated. You know, can you talk about developing that character?
Well, I think it's modeled on a lot of moms in my life, and I find I love moms. I love my mom. I love my kid's mom. I could make movies about moms forever. And my kid actually loves to tease me. They're 9, but they're like, Mike, calls me Mike. Mike, you just made another movie about your mom. And I was like, you haven't even seen any of my movies. I don't know how you know this. That's what it's like. And then Gabby's a real mom of 2, very intelligent person, very kind of like Joaquin, super expansive, does not want to be put in any box, you know, does not want to dally in any cliches or even like the feeling of acting. They're really like, and Woody too, they all kind of hate the feeling of acting, right? If it ever felt like acting, they'd all just like disperse. And you have to like, okay, what's wrong? How do we make it not feel like acting again? And I've seen Gabby in Transparent and Girls, and I always found her like she just leapt out of the scene to me in a great way. Yeah, she's just a very brilliant person.
Mm-hmm. She's terrific. Yeah. And then last question is your son. Have you shown him the film, and what has been his reaction?
They've identified themselves as non-binary now, so they're a they/them person. They haven't seen it. They haven't seen any of my films, but they can tell you the plots of Beginners and 20th Century Women. I'm not even exactly sure how, because I kind of try to like, films take up so much energy. Films get so much attention, right? And in our household, we have me and my kid's mom are both filmmakers, and my kid is like an amazing creative person, you know, and a very intense triple Aries creative person. No joke. And we do a lot of work to just try to give him space and downplay our deal and not be like too overwhelming, because we are. And so Hopper hasn't seen it. There have been opportunities for them to come see it. They're not dying to see it. I'm like, that's great. That's great that they're not dying to see it. That's like they're living their life, and that's how it should be. Maybe someday they'll see it, or maybe not. That's fine.
Well, it's rare for me to just love so much you as a person, and you happen to be one of my favorite filmmakers, and that's what I meant to say. It's just such a joy to have, you know, somebody who I admire so much actually be such a mensch, and I thank you not just for being here today, but for all the times you've come to see us.
Yeah,
so
I love coming here. It's my 3rd time, right?
it's actually more than that.
Is it? Oh, because of the writers thing. Yeah.
The writers, and you presented to Christopher
3rd film,
Plummer.
though. Yeah. It means a lot. I've seen many movies here as a child in this room, and now this room is made very beautiful by you all.
Yeah, and you just keep getting better. I emailed that to you when I saw the film in Telluride.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen the best of you yet, which is actually looking forward to the future.
That's nice, Roger. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.